3 years ago, I sat across from my boss as he said, "Dawson, you're just too ambitious for this company. We're letting you go." I walked out with an empty box and broken dreams. Today, my former company is begging to partner with me. Revenge? Number something better. I still remember the taste of cheap coffee that morning 5 years ago when I first walked into Meridian Marketing. Fresh out of college with a portfolio of ideas that would make Don Draper jealous, I was ready to set the world on fire. Within a year, I had tripled client retention and brought in accounts that the senior executives couldn't crack for decades. They called me the Golden Boy, Dawson Wells, the kid who could sell ice to Eskimos and make them thank him for it. My rise wasn't just meteoric, it was nuclear. Every campaign I touched turned to gold. Every pitch, meeting ended with handshakes and champagne. By year 3, I had my own corner office with a view of the city I was determined to conquer. But success breeds jealousy, and innovation breeds fear, especially when you're working under Robert Klein, the man who'd built Meridian from the ground up with methods that hadn't changed since the 90s. Robert had been my mentor once. I still have the watch he gave me after my first $1 million campaign, inscribed with "To Greater Heights, RK." I wore it every day like a badge of honor. We used to stay late, just the two of us, whiteboarding ideas until midnight, ordering Chinese food, and dreaming up campaigns that would change the industry forever. He taught me everything, or so I thought. What he didn't teach me was how to recognize when your mentor starts seeing you as a threat. It started with small things, my ideas getting tabled for later discussion in meetings, my name mysteriously absent from presentation credits, my team members reassigned to other projects. Then came the confrontation that should have been my warning sign. After presenting my digital transformation strategy that could have revolutionized our client approach, Robert cornered me in the hallway, his face inches from mine. "Who the hell do you think you are?" he hissed, shoving me against the wall, his forearm pressed against my chest. "You think you can walk in here and rewrite 20 years of success?" I pushed back, not willing to be intimidated, and his coffee splashed across his custom suit. The look in his eyes wasn't just anger, it was fear. I poured everything into that company. Birthdays missed, relationships sacrificed, 3 a.m. strategy sessions fueled by energy drinks and determination. My girlfriend left after I missed our anniversary dinner to salvage a client relationship Robert had neglected. "It's always about Meridian with you," she said as she walked out. She was right. I believed in what we were building, even as the company culture shifted around me from innovation to preservation. My vision for Meridian was crystal clear. Expand into digital experiences. Create immersive campaigns that lived beyond billboards and magazine spreads. Build a creative technology division that could compete with Silicon Valley giants who were eating our lunch. But each time I presented these ideas, Robert's smile grew tighter, his endorsements more hesitant. In board meetings, he started referring to my proposals as Dawson's expensive experiments, always with that thin smile that never reached his eyes. The final breaking point came during the Archer Industries pitch, our biggest potential client ever. After weeks of preparation, Robert pulled me aside minutes before we walked into the boardroom. "We're going with the traditional approach," he said, taking my presentation folder from my hands. I watched in horror as he tossed my carefully crafted pitch into the trash. "They want safe, not revolutionary." When I objected, his hand gripped my shoulder with surprising strength. "Remember who built this company, Dawson," he whispered, "and remember who can tear you down just as fast." I should have seen what was coming. I should have noticed how the office whispers changed when I walked by, how meetings suddenly rescheduled when I was meant to lead them, how my most loyal team members started avoiding eye contact. but I was too busy trying to save a company that already had my replacement's name on an office door I hadn't seen yet. Too ambitious, they would say. Too disruptive for our culture. If only I had known then that being too much would become my greatest strength. The morning it happened started like any other. I'd been up since 5 a.m., finalizing the Johnson campaign that was projected to increase their market share by 30%. My most ambitious work yet. The office was unusually quiet when I arrived, colleagues averting their eyes as I walked past. My secretary wasn't at her desk, and there was a yellow post-it note, "Meeting in conference room B, 9 a.m." I checked my calendar. Nothing scheduled. Strange, but I grabbed my coffee and headed there anyway, portfolio tucked under my arm, ready to impress as always. The room fell silent when I walked in. Robert sat at the head of the table, flanked by two HR representatives I barely recognized, and Jessica, our legal counsel. My throat tightened as Robert gestured to an empty chair facing all of them. "Have a seat, Dawson." Not "good morning," not "hey, champ." Just cold, clinical direction from the man who once called me his protégé. "What's this about?" I asked, remaining standing, my heart pounding against my ribs. I knew. Deep down, I already knew. Robert slid a folder across the table. "Your performance review and termination papers." His voice was steady, practiced, as if he'd rehearsed this moment for weeks. Maybe he had. I laughed. Actually laughed, thinking it was some elaborate test. Is this a joke? I flipped open the folder. Performance issues. Insubordination. Failure to adhere to company methodology. Each accusation more ridiculous than the last. "You're being let go effective immediately," one of the HR reps said, not meeting my eyes. "Your personal belongings will be packed and sent to your address on file." For what? I slammed my hand on the table, making the water glasses jump. For bringing in more revenue than anyone in this room? For trying to keep us competitive while the rest of you cling to outdated strategies? Robert stood then, buttoning his jacket like he was preparing for a television appearance. "For being too ambitious, Dawson. This company has a specific direction, and your disruptive ideas are not aligned with our vision." I felt the room spin. 5 years of my life, thousands of hours, my blood and sweat poured into this company, reduced to too ambitious. My hands were shaking as I gripped the back of the chair. "You're firing me for being too good at my job?" "We're firing you for not being a culture fit," Robert corrected, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "You'll receive 2 weeks' severance. We're being generous, considering the circumstances." "What circumstances?" I demanded, stepping toward him. Robert's eyes flashed with something. Fear or triumph, I couldn't tell. "The Archer campaign you've been working on? The board loved it. They've approved full funding." He paused, a slight smile forming. "Under my leadership, of course. Your methods may be effective, Dawson, but you lack the maturity to manage client relationships at that level." Something snapped inside me. 5 years of suppressed rage erupted as I lunged across the table, grabbing Robert by his perfectly pressed collar. Security was on me in seconds, but not before I landed a solid right hook that sent him stumbling back, blood trickling from his lip. "You stole my campaign," I shouted as they dragged me away. Everything in that presentation was mine. The security guards, men I'd bought Christmas gifts for, roughly escorted me through the office floor. Colleagues I'd mentored, taken to lunch, stayed late helping with their projects, all of them watched in silence as I was paraded past their desks like a criminal. My office door was already being cleared, a temp boxing up 5 years of achievements. I caught a glimpse of the Johnson campaign materials on my desk, now property of Meridian, now property of Robert. The final humiliation came at the lobby. As security pushed me through the revolving door, I saw Robert watching from the balcony above, dabbing at his bloodied lip with a handkerchief. Our eyes met for a brief moment. There was no remorse there, no gratitude for the millions I'd earned him, no acknowledgement of our history, just cold calculation and perhaps a hint of satisfaction. Rain soaked through my suit as I stood on the sidewalk, holding the small box of personal items they'd allowed me to take. My company phone buzzed one last time before going dead, remotely wiped. My key card deactivated. 5 years erased in 15 minutes. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, surrounded by the trappings of success I could no longer afford to maintain. The watch Robert had given me caught the light as I turned it over in my hands. To greater heights, RK. With a sudden burst of rage, I hurled it against the wall, watching as it shattered into pieces, just like my career, just like my trust. I didn't know it then, but sometimes the greatest success stories begin with complete destruction, and my story was far from over. The weeks after my firing were a blur of rejection emails and unanswered calls. My reputation was in tatters. Robert had made sure of that. Volatile, difficult, unstable. The whispers followed me through every interview, every networking event. I'd gone from marketing prodigy to industry pariah overnight. My savings dwindled as rent came due, then past due. I sold my car, my watch collection, even my tailored suits, the armor I'd worn into battle every day at Meridian. 3 months in, I hit rock bottom. I was nursing a cheap whiskey at a bar I couldn't afford when I saw it. A billboard showcasing the Archer campaign. My campaign. Robert's name prominently displayed as creative director. The fury that surged through me was unlike anything I'd felt before. I hurled my glass against the wall, sending other patrons scattering. The bartender grabbed me by the collar, his face inches from mine as he dragged me toward the door. "Get your life together, man," he growled, shoving me into the rain-slicked alley. I landed hard on my hands and knees, the grit of the pavement embedding itself into my palms, mixing with the blood from my scraped skin. Huddled there in the cold rain, soaked and broken, something inside me finally cracked open. I began to laugh. Not the hollow laugh of a defeated man, but the dangerous laugh of someone with nothing left to lose. I wasn't just Dawson Wells, fired marketing executive. I was Dawson Wells, the man too ambitious for Meridian marketing, too innovative, too disruptive. And in that moment, drenched and bleeding in an alley, I realized Robert had inadvertently given me the greatest gift possible. He'd named my strength while thinking it was a weakness. I dragged myself back to my nearly empty apartment and stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. Eyes hollow with defeat, 3-day stubble, hair unwashed. "Too ambitious," I whispered to my reflection, the words transforming from accusation to declaration. I pressed my bloodied palms against the cool glass. Too fucking ambitious. That night, I didn't sleep. I pulled out my laptop and began working feverishly, the glow of the screen illuminating my tear-streaked face as I outlined a business plan that would eventually become Apex Innovations. Not just another marketing agency, but a complete reimagining of what client relationships could be. Everything Meridian wasn't. Everything Robert feared. I would build a company that thrived on ambition, that rewarded disruption, that saw innovation not as a threat but as oxygen. By dawn, my fingers were cramped and my eyes burned, but the plan was there. Brilliant, audacious, and completely terrifying. I had no money, no clients, no team, just the knowledge of Meridian's weaknesses, an intimate understanding of what their clients really needed, and a burning desire to prove Robert wrong. I pawned my last valuable possession, a vintage camera my father had given me, for enough money to print business cards and rent a tiny co-working space. I wore my last good shirt to every coffee shop in the financial district, introducing myself to anyone who would listen. Most didn't, but some did. The first breakthrough came when my phone rang 3 weeks later. It was Marcus, Meridian's former tech lead, who'd quit shortly after my firing. "I heard you're starting something," he said, his voice low as if someone might be listening. "Robert's running that place into the ground. The Archer campaign is falling apart without you." My heart raced. "I need a tech team," I admitted. "You've got one," Marcus replied without hesitation. "And I'm not the only one ready to jump ship." The next call came from Lisa, my former assistant. "The Johnson campaign? The one you developed?" "Robert's butchering it," she whispered. "They're furious. I think they're looking elsewhere." One by one, the pieces began falling into place. Former colleagues risking their careers to feed me information. Clients growing increasingly dissatisfied with Meridian's stagnant approaches. Robert, too proud to adapt, doubling down on outdated strategies. The pivotal moment came when I received a text from an unknown number. "Conference room at the Hilton. Tomorrow, 9 a.m., come alone." It was signed simply A. Archer Industries. I arrived early, my heart thundering in my chest, wearing a suit I'd borrowed from Marcus. The Archer CMO was waiting, flanked by two executives I'd never met. "We've seen your proposal," he said without preamble. "It's exactly what we wanted from Meridian." He slid a folder across the table. Inside was my original campaign, the one Robert had stolen. "Where did you get this?" I asked, my hands trembling as I opened it. "Let's just say, not everyone at your former company agrees with how you were treated," he replied with a knowing smile. "The question is, can you deliver what's in this folder? Without Meridian's resources." I met his gaze steadily, the fire of my ambition burning away any remaining self-doubt. "I can deliver something better," I promised, "because I'm not constrained by fear of innovation." I extended my hand across the table. "Meridian gave you the safe choice. I'm offering you the right one." He hesitated only for a moment before grasping my hand firmly. "Congratulations, Mr. Wells. Apex Innovations just landed its first major client." As I walked out of that hotel, contract in hand, I felt the weight of months of despair lifting from my shoulders. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Well?" I sent back just 2 words that would change everything. "We're in." That night, I stood at my apartment window overlooking the city, the lights below mirroring the stars igniting within me. Robert had tried to extinguish my flame, but instead, he'd only scattered the embers, starting a wildfire he would soon be unable to contain. My ambition, once my greatest liability, was about to become my most powerful weapon. The game had changed, and Robert didn't even know he was playing. Word travels fast in the marketing world. Within 6 months, Apex Innovations had grown from a desperate gamble to a legitimate contender. I'd secured a proper office space, assembled a team of 15, 8 of them former Meridian employees who believed in my vision, and our client roster was expanding weekly. The Archer campaign exceeded all projections, generating buzz throughout the industry and earning us a reputation for bold, effective strategies that traditional agencies couldn't match. I was in the middle of a pitch meeting when Lisa burst into the conference room, her face flushed with excitement. "Dawson, you need to see this," she whispered, sliding her tablet toward me. On the screen was a financial report, Meridian's quarterly earnings, down 32% year over year. Client retention plummeting, stock price in free fall. "Excuse me," I said to the potential clients, maintaining my composure despite the adrenaline surging through my veins. "Take 5 minutes to review the proposal. I'll be right back." In the hallway, Lisa could barely contain herself. "Johnson terminated their contract with Meridian yesterday. CareTech is considering doing the same." These were cornerstone clients, accounts that formed the foundation of Meridian's portfolio. "Robert's losing control," The board is getting nervous. I should have felt vindicated, triumphant even. Instead, a strange calm settled over me. Keep this quiet, I instructed her. We're not celebrating someone else's downfall. We're building something better. 2 weeks later, I was working late when Marcus appeared in my doorway, his expression unreadable. There's someone here to see you. Before I could ask who, a familiar figure stepped into view. Jessica, Meridian's legal counsel, who had sat silently during my termination. "What are you doing here?" I demanded, rising from my chair, hands clenched at my sides. She placed a thick envelope on my desk. "Robert doesn't know I'm here," she said quietly. "But the board does." She pushed the envelope toward me. "They want to talk." Inside was an offer, not for a settlement or a cease and desist, as I'd feared, but an acquisition proposal. Meridian wanted to buy Apex Innovations. The figure made my breath catch. Enough money to set me up for life. Enough to call it a win and walk away. "The board recognizes the mistake that was made," Jessica explained carefully. "This is their way of correcting it." I laughed, the sound harsh in the quiet office. Robert would never allow this. He'd rather burn Meridian to the ground than admit he was wrong about me. "Robert may not have a choice much longer," she replied, not meeting my eyes. "The board vote is next week." For 3 days, I agonized over the decision. The money was tempting, validation in the form of 7 figures. But something felt unfinished. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about proving that ambition, when channeled correctly, creates rather than destroys. I arrived at Meridian's headquarters exactly 1 year after my ignominious exit. The same security guard nodded respectfully as I passed. The same elevator carried me to the executive floor. But everything else had changed. The energy was different, tense, uncertain, like a company holding its breath. The boardroom fell silent as I entered. 8 board members sat along one side of the table. Robert occupied the head chair, looking smaller somehow, the confident swagger replaced by defensive posture. His eyes widened at the sight of me, then narrowed in naked hostility. "Mr. Wells," the board chairman began, "thank you for—" "What is he doing here?" Robert cut in, half rising from his seat. "This meeting is about strategy, not—" "This meeting," the chairman interrupted firmly, "is about the future of Meridian. Please sit down, Robert." For the next hour I presented my vision. Not for Apex's absorption into Meridian, but for a strategic partnership. 2 companies, distinct but aligned, each focusing on what they did best. Meridian's established presence combined with Apex's innovation. Not an acquisition, but a collaboration. "This is absurd," Robert finally exploded, slamming his hand on the table. "He's the competition. He's been poaching our clients, our employees." "Your clients left because you couldn't deliver what they needed," I replied evenly. "Your employees left because you fostered fear instead of innovation." Robert lunged across the table, grabbing my lapels with surprising strength. "You arrogant little—" 2 board members pulled him back, but not before I saw it in his eyes. The same fear I'd glimpsed a year ago, now magnified tenfold. Fear of change, fear of being surpassed, fear of admitting he'd been wrong. "Enough," the chairman commanded. "Robert, step outside. Now." When the door closed behind him, the chairman turned to me. "Your proposal is unorthodox, but intriguing. The board will need to discuss." 3 days later, the partnership was approved. With one condition. Robert would step down as CEO, taking an advisory role with minimal operational influence. I would head the new joint ventures innovation division while maintaining Apex as a separate entity. It wasn't revenge. It was something far more satisfying. Evolution. The day we announced the partnership, I found Robert clearing out his office, his movements stiff with suppressed rage. For a moment, we stood in silence, the weight of our shared history hanging between us. "You destroyed me," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. I shook my head. "You did that yourself, the moment you decided ambition was a threat rather than an asset." "So that's it? You win, I lose?" he asked bitterly. "No, Robert, that's the mindset that brought you here." I stepped closer. "We both could have won. You taught me almost everything I know about this business. If you'd seen me as a partner instead of a rival, imagine what we could have built together." Something flickered across his face. Regret, perhaps, or simply resignation. He picked up his box of belongings and moved toward the door, then paused. "Why did you come back? You had your own company. You were succeeding. Why not just let Meridian fail?" I smiled then, not in triumph, but with genuine realization. "Because this was never about destroying what you built. It was about building something better." I extended my hand. "And I still believe you have something to contribute." He stared at my outstretched hand for a long moment before giving it the briefest of shakes. As he walked away, I called after him. "Thank you, Robert." He turned, confusion evident on his face. "For what?" "For firing the ambitious guy," I replied. "It was the push I needed." 3 years later, our joint venture is the industry leader in innovative marketing solutions. Meridian's traditional strengths, combined with Apex's forward-thinking approaches, created something neither could have achieved alone. Robert eventually found his place as a mentor to young talent, his experience valuable when not wielded as a weapon. As for me, I keep the framed termination letter on my office wall. "Too ambitious," highlighted in bright yellow. A daily reminder that what others see as your greatest flaw might just be your superpower in disguise. Sometimes being knocked down isn't the end of your story. Sometimes it's just the beginning of a better one.